Hypnosis, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you hear the word and all sorts of things come to mind, like
Mhm.
mind control, swinging watches, all that stuff. People doing things they wouldn't normally do. Well, in this deep dive, we're going to try to get to the bottom of some of that. We're going to be looking at the work of Nicholas Spanos. He was a psychologist who had some different ideas about how hypnosis works.
Yeah, Spanos' work, well, it's really important stuff if you're interested in how our expectations and beliefs can really change our experiences. Even something like hypnosis, like a lot of people, they still think of hypnosis like it was back in the 18th century,
Huh.
With Franz Mesmer and all that.
Oh, yeah. Mesmer.
Right. He had this whole thing about animal magnetism, thought he could heal people with magnets and weird rituals.
Magnets, huh?
Yeah. Wild stuff. Of course, we know now that wasn't actually true. But, well, it definitely contributed to the image of hypnosis as this mysterious, powerful force.
Definitely. And for a long time, there were psychologists who thought hypnosis really did cause an altered state of consciousness, like you go into some kind of trance.
Right.
Ernest Hilgard, wasn't he one of the big researchers in this area?
Oh, yeah. Hilgard was a big proponent of that view. He believed hypnosis made people much more suggestible and that it could even reduce pain,
Yeah, like analgesia.
Exactly.
So where does Spanos fit in with all of this?
Well, Spanos, he disagreed with that whole idea, said hypnosis isn't a special state at all. He thought it was more about performance, People act like they're hypnotized because of social pressures, expectations, things like that.
So you're saying they're not actually being controlled. They're just kind of going along with it.
That's exactly it. Spanos pointed out that, the way hypnotic suggestions are worded, it makes it seem like the actions are involuntary.
Okay. Okay.
Think about the classic suggestion. Your arm is heavy and rising.
Oh, right.
If you really think about it, to do that, you actually have to work against gravity.
Right.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder to see the action as being voluntary.
I guess when you're trying to hold your arm up, you might actually start to think something else is making it happen.
Right. Exactly. And Spanos, he didn't just talk about these ideas. He actually did experiments to test them.
So he put it to the test. What kind of experiments?
Well, in one study, he told some of the participants that arm rigidity was, a normal hypnotic phenomenon. And guess what? Those people, they actually started to show arm rigidity, even though nobody had directly suggested it to them.
Wow. So just thinking it could happen actually made it happen?
It seems that way, yeah. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
It really makes you wonder how much of what we experience is really based on what we think will happen.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes Spanos' work so compelling. It forces us to question how much of what we think is real is just because of what we already believe. He did another experiment where people had to visualize things, picture them in their minds.
Mm-hmm. And then they had to rate how vivid those images were.
Interesting.
The people who did the visualizations, both under hypnosis and normally, well, they rated the hypnotic images as more intense, just because they expected them to be. But when separate groups did the ratings without any comparison, they rated the images the same.
So once again, what people expected to happen seems to have affected what they actually experienced.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to, almost like they're trying to prove what they already believe about hypnosis.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
But, okay, so if that's the case, does this mean hypnosis is just fake?
Wow.
If it's not some kind of weird altered state, does it even work?
That is the million-dollar question. Even if hypnosis isn't some strange trance, it might still be a useful tool for making changes. The power of belief, of expectation, it's incredibly strong, even without a trance.
So maybe it's not about getting to some hidden part of your mind, but about using the power as expectations.
That's a good way to put it.
But wouldn't that mean other things could do the same thing, like therapy or even just willpower?
Well, believing in something definitely matters. But studies have actually shown that hypnosis isn't really any more effective than other therapies for things like quitting smoking, losing weight, or improving your memory.
So it's not a cure-all then. Doesn't seem quite as powerful as people make it out to be.
Exactly. And that's really where Spanos' work, I guess you could say it goes against the kind of the romanticized view of hypnosis. It's a good reminder that sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one.
So where does that leave us? Is hypnosis real or not?
People are still debating that, even today. But there's no doubt that Spanos' research really made the field of psychology rethink a lot of its assumptions. It's a great example of how science gets better by challenging old ideas.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It really makes you think. I mean, if what we believe can actually affect something like how much pain we feel, what other things in our lives could be changed more easily than we realize?
That's a great question, and it's one of the most important takeaways from Spanos' work. It really highlights how powerful the mind is and how much we still don't understand about it. It really makes you wonder if maybe the people in these experiments are just, playing a role, like actors.
Oh,
They
interesting.
know what they're supposed to do, and so they do it.
Yeah, that's kind of what Spanos was getting at, right? He talked about how the whole process of being hypnotized, it encourages that kind of role playing.
Right.
The darkened room, the calm voice,
Yeah.
all that focus on relaxing, it all kind of sets the stage for people to act like someone being hypnotized.
Exactly. And the more they get into that role, the more likely they are to experience those typical hypnotic phenomena.
So they might convince themselves that they're moving involuntarily or
Mhm.
seeing vivid images or not feeling pain just because they've accepted that that's what's supposed to happen.
Right.
They actually believe it's happening.
Yeah, it's not that they're faking it, really. It's more like almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe you'll be hypnotized, so you act in ways that kind of confirm that belief, even if you're actually in control of those actions.
And this is where I think Spanos' work gets really interesting. Kind of makes you question what consciousness even is.
Yeah.
If our beliefs can have such a strong effect on what we experience, what does that say about free will?
That's a big one. Philosophers have been debating that for centuries.
Yeah, it's like our beliefs shape our actions, and then our actions reinforce our beliefs.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation.
It really is, and I guess hypnosis is kind of a way to see that happening in action. It's a situation where, like, those beliefs and expectations are really magnified, and it makes it easier to see how they work. So, okay, let's say we buy into what Spanos is saying.
Okay.
What does that mean for actually using hypnosis? If it's not about accessing some altered state, then what's the point?
Well, even if we don't believe in this idea of a hypnotic trance, the power of suggestion, the power of expectation, it's still there. And that power can be harnessed. It can be used to create positive change.
Okay, but you said earlier that studies have shown that hypnosis isn't actually any more effective than other therapies, right?
Right.
So why even bother with hypnosis?
That's a good point. And hypnosis might not be the best approach for certain issues, but for some people, the ritual of hypnosis, the performance of it, I think it can provide a framework that helps them accept suggestions for change.
So it's not really the hypnosis itself that's doing the work, but the context it provides.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It's kind of like I don't know, almost like a mental trick we play on ourselves to make change a little easier to swallow.
I see what you mean. I'm starting to see why this whole topic is so complicated, so controversial. It's not just about science. It's about what we believe, about the mind, about free will, even about what's real and what's not.
It really touches on some fundamental questions, doesn't it?
It does.
Hmm.
And that's what makes Spanos' work so important. It forces us to think about those big questions, to consider different points of view. So, okay, let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I'm kind of curious about hypnosis.
Okay.
What should they keep in mind if they want to try it? What are some things to watch out for?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have realistic expectations. Don't expect hypnosis to be like some magic solution or a quick fix for everything.
Right.
It's a tool, and like any tool, it depends on how you use it.
So no instant weight loss or superhuman strength, huh?
Probably not. But, it might help you manage stress or break bad habits or even just understand your own mind a little better.
Okay. And so if someone does decide to give hypnosis a try, what should they look for in a practitioner?
That's a really important question. You definitely want to find someone who's experienced, who has a good reputation. And I think most importantly, you need to find someone you feel comfortable with.
I'm guessing a swinging watch and a velvet cape aren't good signs.
Probably not the best indicators. A good hypnotist, they're going to explain everything clearly, talk about any concerns you might have, and work with you to achieve your goals.
So it's more about a therapeutic partnership than like a mystical experience.
Exactly. And that's something that I think often gets lost in how hypnosis is portrayed in the media.
For sure. This deep dive, it's definitely given me a lot to think about. It's changed how I thought about hypnosis.
Yeah.
And it's made me realize how powerful our beliefs really are in shaping our experiences.
That's what's so great about exploring these topics. It opens up new ways of understanding ourselves and the world around us.
It really makes you wonder, like, do we give our beliefs too much power? Or maybe not enough. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's a tough one. I think it's about finding that balance, recognizing how powerful beliefs can be, but without thinking that we can just, like, will anything into existence just by believing it hard enough.
Right. It's not about pretending that things aren't real. It's more about understanding how our perceptions actually shape our reality. It's funny. After learning about all this stuff with Spanos, I feel like I see examples of it everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like people who are really into horoscopes,
Oh, yeah.
They always find ways to make those predictions fit their lives, even if the predictions are super vague.
That's a great example. We tend to look for information and interpret it in a way that supports what we already believe, even if that information isn't totally accurate.
It's like we're all hypnotizing ourselves a little bit with our own beliefs.
That's a really interesting way to put it, and it really shows why it's so important to be aware of our own biases, to question what we think we know, and to be open to different perspectives.
Otherwise, we just end up stuck in our own little worlds,
Oh.
surrounded by information that only tells us what we already think.
Exactly. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Gotcha.
This whole deep dive, it's about seeing new things, challenging our assumptions, and hopefully getting a better understanding of the world.
And I think we did that. This whole deep dive has definitely changed my perspective on hypnosis and just on the power of belief in general. And it's made me realize how important it is to really think critically about things. I think I'm going to look at the world a little differently now.
And that's what it's all about, right? Not just learning new things, but letting that knowledge change how we understand and experience the world.
So to wrap things up, I guess the big takeaway from this deep dive is that hypnosis, well, it might not be the mind control trick that it's often made out to be. But the power of belief, the power of expectation, that's real. And it's something we should all pay attention to.
Couldn't agree more. And maybe, just maybe, the most important question isn't, is hypnosis real? But rather, how are our own beliefs and expectations affecting our experiences, even without us realizing it?
That's a good one. Definitely something to think about. Until next time, keep diving deep.